Fairy tales. Unique stories given and shape a crucial part of us in our early years. There have been many a thousand since the dawn of time, each unique in their own way. Some meant to be sweet and nurturing tales. Others can serve as dark and foreboding. Some even walk a nice fine line of the two. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, do I have a fairy tale for y'all that does just that. Hello everybody, this is Primal here, and today I bring you Bramble the Mountain King as subject of today's video. Of course, I've already done so through a series of 5 videos these past couple of days. But given this individual project here, I think you all have a good idea what to expect what I have to show y'all today. That's right folks, this is indeed another boss ranking. One not yet done before on this Scandinavian Little Nightmares style indie horror. In full disclosure, Bramble the Mountain King is an indie game made by Dim Frost Studios based on the critically acclaimed Little Nightmares franchise. It tells the story of a young boy named Ole who is on a quest to rescue his older sister Lilimor, after happening upon a small dark world full of northern mythology and grim fairy tales, wherein Lilimor is kidnapped shortly after. Armed with nothing but the hope that he will see his loving sister again should he press on, and a stone of light to burn away darkness and corruption, Ole must venture through this grueling, grim fairy tale world, full of monsters and malevolent spirit aplenty, in order to save her, all while uncovering the dark secrets of a mysterious curse of Bramble that has spread across this kingdom. I definitely wanted to do this ranking worst to best, and maybe even least the most scary. The monsters here each have a fair and equal amount of quality in their own way for what they are, so it was very difficult for me to find an order to put them all in that regard. So I've decided to do this one based on difficulty easiest to hardest. So with that all said and out of the way, kick back, relax, enjoy, and let's dive right in! Number 7. The Searcher Troll. Trolls have always had a big role in northern mythology, so it's really no surprise that they'd be involved in a game like this here. There are 2 different types of trolls in this game, and they both consist of the first couple of boss fights you'll have. The slender, more shady-looking kind that you see here seem to be responsible for hunting for food, whether it be for themselves or, well, we'll get to that entry later on. And it seems that they'll eat just about anything that wanders around in their forest, whether it be the cute, adorable little gnomes that you met at the start of the game, or even creatures that amount to their size, like wild boars and moose. The other kind, however, well, we'll get to him a little later on. But let's just say that that kind is responsible for more of the hard labor that happens around in their community. The trolls are the very first real monsters that you'll run into in Bramble, not just boss fights. And the kind that this guy is here is the very first kind of real monster that you'll run into. As soon as Lilimor runs off with some fairies, one of these guys here sneaks up from behind and snatches her. And almost gets Ole too had he not jumped into the river. So let's talk a little bit about the encounter here itself now, shall we? To be honest, it's really not much. Really just your average stealth section, if anything. Just watch the pattern of the troll's searchlight and move when it's out of your range. And of course, always be sure to hide in the cover of the tall grass. I don't know if he can see you standing up, but it's pretty likely. The next section is a little bit tougher, as you have to move through water with bear traps hidden at the bottom of it. The troll's light will reveal their location, so just memorize the path and move when the light passes you. Which is actually a lot easier than it seems, believe it or not. The last section is just as basic as the first, as all you have to do really is stay out of the troll's line of sight as you move across a ruined building. Very basic, very easy to do as long as you pay good attention. And also a very disconnected encounter as well, seeing as even though you sneak past the troll, you don't get a real conclusion with it until you find the light stone. Number 6. Carhaxen. Carhaxen is the Scandinavian version of your classic witch for those who don't know. Lives in spooky swamps, bogs, or marshes, conducting perverse rituals. Your encounter with the one in this game happens to be one of the most scariest moments, especially in its build-up. The moment you enter the swamp and see this disturbing figure still alive nailed to a post, you just know something bad is about to come with it. Since then, the music becomes more foreboding as you head to the house in the distance. And things get creepier as day turns to night, and you have every now and then encounters with the Meerlings, or spirits of deceased infants who were sacrificed in Carhaxen's rituals. And then you enter the house, and the atmosphere in there could not be any more unsettling, having to conduct puzzles involving witchcraft, and also being able to peer into the darkness outside, wondering what's out there right now. And then there's the spell book you find with demonic narration. And then there's the moment where Ole happens upon a woman about to conduct a ritual sacrificing an infant to Carhaxen. And then while giving chase to her, the encounter itself happens. The encounter itself is pretty simplistic. All you do is look around for the bubbles, keep track of them, and flash Carhaxen when she pops up. It seems pretty easy and bare bones, but it does require you using your instincts more, which is why she's just a step above being a little bit more difficult. In my honest personal opinion, I felt that this encounter was a little rushed. It had some pretty good build-up for what it was, but I have a feeling they could have done a whole lot more with it. I know it's an indie game and there's only so much that you can do in regards to that. And who knows, maybe the devs were rushed a little bit in some areas, including this one. But given what Carhaxen was and the lore surrounding it, I really feel like they could have done a lot more. And a lot of the scares with her towards the end were pretty predictable, especially since you run into her right out in the open. Number 5. Kolis the Butcher Troll. This guy here is one of the other two types of trolls that you'll encounter in this game, the ones that do all the hard labor around here. And he's the very first boss that you'll encounter in this game. Whilst trying to sneak through his gory and disgusting slaughterhouse, Ole eventually finds himself right on this guy's cutting table, which is very crowded and claustrophobic, leaving very little room to run around. But that in of itself balances out the troll's basic attacks of using his meat cleaver or fist pound, providing the feelings of stress in this encounter that make it what it is. Eventually his blade will get stuck and globs of blood will fall down. Pick them up, throw them in his eyes, wash, rinse, and repeat 2 more times, and his recklessness will carve open a path for you to escape. Number 4. Nakin. There's definitely quite a couple of memorable encounters here in this game, but Nakin here is definitely a contender for top spot. The moments that you have with him are some of the most intense and horrifying in this game. Nakin is, how should I put it, a very versatile mythical creature. He goes by many different names while also having many different depictions. Noken, Nixie, Kelpie. Some describe him as a brilliant horse that lives by the lakes and rivers. Others a naked man who lures people with his enchanting violin music. But at the core of it all, he's still the same, a water spirit who drowns people. But the most interesting and common depiction is definitely the man with the violin. After escaping the troll forest, Ole happens upon this malevolent spirit in a gorgeous spring he discovers next morning. Lured to the water's edge by the forbidden melodies being played, he finds himself in Nakin's clutches, finding himself to be his next but thankfully last victim. In the moments outside of the encounter, Ole learns about this creature and his tragic backstory. He was once a man who had a very distinct talent for the violin, but those around him in his village always bullied him for it, except the girl he loved. One day he had enough and learned darker tunes which made everybody dance until they were dead, including the love of his life. Distraught by loss and grief, he exiled himself to the lake, was consumed by its own madness still, where he still lures people with his deadly music. The encounter itself may seem like another basic stealth and chase section, but it is by far their most intense and challenging yet. It starts off with very subtle horror as Ole falls into the lake, where Nakin then spots him and sinks into the water to go after him, leaving you completely on edge until he reemerges again. Then he tries to sink you across some lily pads and chases you across a muddy lake bed, and as you watch him crawl towards you, every fiber of your being is just praying he doesn't get you. The next section is where you must avoid him while he sits upon a rock and tries to blast you with sound. You must hide, duck, and cover behind the rocks to avoid being blown away. The variety of each piece of cover is where a good amount of the challenge of this encounter comes from. Some bits you must make sure you're fully crouched behind. Others, there are rocks that you must make sure you're behind as they fall. And then comes the last bit, which I find to be pretty challenging itself, as you must steer past obstacles as he chases you down a river and then a waterfall, which fortunately leads to his end. Number 3, the Mountain King. Now we've come to the final boss. The guy whose namesake is a major part of this game. The very being who caused all the major events of the story. And the one who has a major piece of historic music that he completely embodies. King Nils the Mountain King. Once upon a time, he was once the king of this great mythical land that this game takes place in. He had it all, a great kingdom and a loving wife. And eventually, a son whom he loved very dearly. But unfortunately, at the same time, it also led to his wife's early passing. And when one day he was about to lose his son too to an illness, he went to every single great length to save him. Hearing about a mythical flower held in the care of a specific witch, he began a great and gruesome campaign hunting down everyone he could to find it. And when he finally found the one, he begged her help and was fortunate enough to receive it. His son was saved but grew despondent due to the actions his father took to save him, and from that he took his own life. The king lost himself to his darkness and used the power of the flower to enact a great curse which spread Bramble across the entire kingdom. The White Witch saw this and imprisoned the king within a great mountain, where he has remained since, being fed by the trolls as punishment for his misdeeds. And apparently the one thing that kicked this whole game off was the fact that the trolls decided to make Ole's sister Lillemor the king's next meal. And with very little hope left at this point, Ole must battle the once great, now fallen king to save her. And with this encounter, I can definitely say the devs went all out. The king himself is one of the most intense, challenging, and well-thought encounters in the whole game. He has a wide variety of attacks that pile on one after the other, but also at the same time give you a fair amount of breathing room within each one of their unique patterns. Armed with the power of the Light Stone and the visage of the king's late son, Ole must save the wizened and tired old man by using the light to cleanse the Bramble from the king. The first phase starts off pretty basic, as the king will periodically attack you with a fork and knife. Just watch the shadows and the positioning and attack when he's fully done with one or the other. And then phase 2 is where things really ramp up as he breaks out his sword and scepter. He'll initially swing once with a sword, but then it'll become a 2-swing combo later on. He'll try to bash you with a scepter, but it will also cause debris to rain down upon you. And in the third phase, you must hide behind the debris in order to avoid this huge AoE he does. And the best part of it all, it's all paced and played out to the actual Mountain King song, which has been completely re-enditioned and turned into an even more epic piece for this game. With the power of the Light Stone and the fact that Ole is wearing Ulrich's clothes, King Nils is able to come back to the light and end the curse of Bramble. And in seemingly both of their last moments, Ole sacrifices himself to save his sister from being trapped within the king. But even though this is a horror game of sorts, it's also a fairy tale and there will be no sad endings today. Number 2. Skogsra, or Skogsret. Commonly a succubal shape-shifting forest nymph, who lures unsuspecting men into her forest, in hopes of gaining their love. They tend to the forests that they inhabit, and strike down those who cause harm to their homes. Mainly she appears as a beautiful woman or a loved one to their victims. Their true forms, however, are more fawn-like in appearance, consisting of antlers and either a fox or cow's tail. And it just so happens that one of these fickle forest spirits is the poster boss for this game, and indeed one of the best encounters too. Shortly after escaping Karhaxen's swamp and taking refuge in Lick Guber's library, Skogsra lures Ole to her grove by appearing as his sister, but the treachery he discovers there, however, causes him to snap as he fights for his life. The encounter starts off pretty basic, as you must take cover behind the trees to avoid a good amount of her spells. There is one that will force you away from the cover, as it causes blood spikes to erupt from the ground around the trees, but it's pretty easy to see coming, as long as you're paying attention to her movements and her audio cues from the spells she casts. And it's practically the same deal in the second phase, the only difference there is there's less trees, and that's when she breaks out more of her arsenal against you. The key to beating her is to cleanse the bodies hidden around the trees that you take cover behind, and then when you've gotten them all, attack her with the Light Stone to down her. Ole's rage will turn the stone into a dagger which you can use to attack her, but you really don't get to do anything with it till like the very end of the fight. It's practically the same thing in phase 2 and 3, only difference is the bodies are hidden in the front of the trees rather than behind them where you hide, and then in phase 3 there are no more trees. Phase 3 is where things really ramp up. The bodies surround her out in the open for you to easily hit, but now you must move faster because this is where she really turns up the pressure. She'll give you very little room to breathe here from here on out. One attack after the other with beams of moonlight, her blood wave attack which you must now jump over instead of hiding behind a tree, and of course the blood bomb storm that she summoned in phase 2. Be patient, but you must also be quick, because you really don't want to take your time fighting her from here on out. The openings to attack are very small now, but as long as you pay good attention to them and what she throws at you at the same time, you should do just fine. At the end of it all, you get to witness a little boy venting all of his frustration from the evil, from her, and everything else right out on her. A quick time doesn't end until you say so, and you actually get a trophy for stabbing her 100 times in a row. Number 1. Okay, that was a really sucky effect, I apologize. Definitely the darkest encounter in this entire game, as well as the most challenging from the way I see it. Just as soon as you're done with a Skogsra, she goes straight to stalking you just moments after. Literally one of the biggest out of the frying pan and into the fire moments I've ever seen. As you trek through the burned forest, which used to be part of Skogsra's home, you can see her moving through the haze in the distance, right up until you reach Nilsholt, the village that lay just right outside of King Nil's mountain kingdom, that she just so happened to curse. Nilsholt was once a peaceful town, full of good people that prospered in the kingdom. But when Skogsra started luring away men from the village to fuel her desires, a great witch hunt began to which many innocent girls lost their lives. One night, a group of 5 took matters into their own hands and ventured out into the forest, burning down a great part of it, until they happened across the girl who was Skogsra, who lured them into her grove, and turned them into hosts for her power. That's what all the bodies that you saw were in her boss fight. The pandemonium caused by the witch hunt led to the village being cursed by Pesta. For those who don't know, Pesta is a very grim but prominent figure in northern mythology. She is described as an old woman with an ashen face, garbed in black, carrying with her a broomstick and a rake, and she is said to be the very embodiment of the bubonic plague. She uses her tools to decide her victim's fate. If she passes your house and uses her rake, you will live. If she starts sweeping with her broomstick, however, you will die. But Ole doesn't really have his real run-in with her until he escapes the village and starts making his way for the mountain via boat. She comes after him in the darkness of the eclipse that occurs, giving him dark premonitions of his sister, and trapping him in an intense nightmare of pitch black on the boat, where he must face her. Ole must escape using the Stone of Light to blind her. Key openings are after every single one of her attacks, which she has a fair variety of. And she'll also be very lucky to survive, given what they are. One of which will appear and attack you with a swarm of rats, which you must pay very close attention to the gaps to avoid. Another is where she'll attack you with her rake. Once again, just squeeze through the gaps. She has 3 varieties of it, forward, back, or even upside down. Another is where she'll come up from below and try to eat you, which I find to be one of her most perturbing, especially with the sound design and all. And her last is definitely her most puzzling. There will be multiple apparitions of her, and you must find the real one before it's too late and she sneezes on you. To fully escape, you must hit each of her eyes twice to fully blind her. When you do escape, there will be a brief period where you must keep rowing towards the mountain as she recovers. Go through about 2 more rounds with her and you will have fully escaped. Everything I saw from her was just about perfect, though there was one thing I found about her that was a little too challenging for me. During her later phases, her positioning will change and you have to quickly track her down and hit her before it's too late. And you only get 1 shot to hit her too. Well guys, that's it for this list. What y'all think? Do you like this game? Did y'all enjoy learning more about the world of Bramble? Which one of these mythical baddies stood out most to you? Either way, I hope y'all enjoyed. It's really awesome being able to do projects like this from time to time. With that all said and out of the way, I shall see y'all in the next one. Peace out till then.